Hi, Elaine here. Today I'll share how a simple demonstration turned Affinity Publisher into a crashing mess and how I fixed it. There are two parts to this demo. The first part is the simple demonstration that I had planned. The second part became a necessity after an enquiry from a viewer made Affinity Publisher throw all its toys out of the pram. But let's get the easy part done first. I have an A4 page and the first thing I need to do is add a table to it. Across to the table tool, just draw out any size of table. And I happen to know in here that I am going to need 42 columns and 60 rows. Then I need to make sure that everything is the right size. For this one, I'm working with cells that are 5mm by 5mm. The next step is to make sure that I have selected all of the cells. And in the stroke and fill section of the table panel, I'm going to apply a default border to all of the borders in the table. To do that, I'm going to go and format it with a graph lines global colour that I have, and I will set that to 0.5. And that is the result. The next step is to think about adding a thicker border every 5 columns. To do that, I am going to zoom in a little bit so I can see the columns. The first 5 columns and the first 5 rows are going to make up the first block. So I need to be selecting column F, G, H, I and J. Then I need to skip 5 and select P, Q, R, S and T. Then skip 5 and then select Z, A, B, C and D. Skip 5 and then J, K, L, M and N. Now to do that, I'm holding the Command key down, and that enables me to make something that's called a non-contiguous selection, which is where I'm making a selection but not all of the cells are next to each other. And that has selected right down to the bottom of the page. So looking at the page, you can see it goes right down to row 60. And then what I need to do is in my stroke and fill section, I'm going to choose an option in the third row, which is outside vertical, which is going to allow me to format the left and right edges of my selection. Clicking that, I've got the correct colour selected, but what I'm going to do with this is change it from 0.5 to 1. And clicking away, you can almost see it. If I zoom in, you'll see it a little bit better. Okay, it's half done at that point. But going back into this, I need to skip the first 5 rows and then make a selection of 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10. Skip the next 5 and then make another selection of 5. So remember, I'm holding the Command key down to do this. And another 5. Skip 5, another 5. Yes, it's repetitive, but you only need to do it once. Skip 5, choose another 5. And finally skip 5 and choose the last 5. And they're done. With this one, obviously, instead of the right and left, I need it to be the top and bottom. And that option is in the second row in the border, which is the outside horizontal. Making sure I have that selected. The colour is correct, but I'm changing it from 0.5 up to 1. And when I click away, we have those squares. Let's zoom into that, and there is the finished result. So that couldn't be much simpler, could it? Until that question from a viewer, which was, Elaine, how would you design a table format of, say, 1mm squares with every 10th cell having a thicker stroke? So a 10mm square with a stroke of 0.5 and inside squares with a stroke of 0.2. Simplicity itself. Or so I thought. It's nothing more than a variation of what we've just done. What could possibly go wrong? Well, be careful what you ask. An A4 page is 210mm wide and 297mm tall. I created a table with 210 columns and 297 rows. And Affinity Publisher ground to a halt. A complete halt. If you discount the spinning beach ball, which was the only thing that was moving. Now, before you start thinking it might be my computer, I use a Mac Studio, the very latest Mac Studio. And when I bought it, I spec'd it up to the maximum. Apple don't make a computer more powerful than this one. But just for confirmation, I tried it on an iMac as well. Don't do that. It almost melted. Since Serif Affinity pride themselves on the ability to zoom to unbelievable levels, it's a shame they didn't pay as much attention to large tables. Lesson to be learned? A plan B was needed. It didn't take me long to come up with a dirty hack that actually provides some additional benefits. I'm going to demo this with an A5 page. This is the A5 page. And the first job is to create a small table, because we know a small table works. Just drawing out any size of table, making sure that that has 10 rows and 10 columns. Now I'm going to format it while I can see it, because it needs to be considerably smaller than this. But first job is to make sure that the borders are the correct colour, choosing all of them, and then selecting the graph line's global colour, and setting this to 0.2, which was in the requirements. And that bit is done. Then, making sure I have it selected, setting the outside border of this to 0.5. What we have created there is one group of cells. We're just going to need considerably more than one group of cells. But the next thing to do with this is make sure that it's the correct size. At the moment, it's over 5 millimeters, and each one of these only needs to be 1 millimeter. So the table is incredibly tiny. It also needs to be positioned in the top left corner. So making sure I've moved it to the right place, and then we'll zoom out and see the whole page. At this stage, there's an optional step, and that is to convert this entire table into a symbol. Before I do that, I'm going to make sure I've given it a name. Cell group would appear to be quite logical. And then to turn it into a symbol, I'm going to use Studio Link to activate the Affinity Designer toolset. With it selected in my Symbols panel, which is available from Window Symbols, I'm going to click Create. And that's it. Then I'm going back to Affinity Publisher. That step is completely optional. It will make it easier to update though. Once I'm back in Affinity Publisher, with the table selected, I'm going to press Enter, which shows me the Move Duplicate dialog box. What I would like to do with this is move it horizontally by 10 millimeters. But I don't just want to move it, I want a duplicate of that. And I don't just want one copy either. I think I'm going to need 15. No, 14. It is hanging off the edge slightly, but not to worry about that at this stage. And then click OK. That gives me one row of my graph paper. I could at this stage decide to group those together. That's pretty much optional, but it certainly tidies up the layer panel. Then, with the group selected, press Enter again, and that brings the Move Duplicate dialog back. This time I need it to move 10 millimeters vertically. Again, I don't want to actually move that one copy, I want multiple copies of it. This time it's 20 copies. And once I've done that, I can click OK. Then, again, to tidy up that layers panel, I'm selecting all of the rows and grouping that together. Then I would name that group Graph Paper. Now, while the maths works out brilliantly, vertically, horizontally, we do have part of this hanging off the page. To fix that, use the Vector Crop tool and just scoot that back in to the edge of the page, which is 148 millimeters. Once you've done that, you are finished. And notice, Affinity Publisher has not at this stage thrown all its toys out of the pram. I have done this several times, and it has worked every time. The symptoms were it started to run really slowly and eventually crashed. Now you can see here it's not beach balling, it's letting me carry on, it's letting me make selections in the layers panel. So I think that dirty hack is exactly what's needed for this. Who'd have thought it? Now if you do want to make changes to this, there's a couple of easy ways to do that. Just so we can see those, I am going to zoom into that top corner. The first way to make changes is to edit the fill that is a global fill. And as I change the colour in there, you can see that all the groups of cells update and no lag in the application. So there's the first change. The second change involves actually editing the symbol. To do that, I'm going to double click and double click until I get down to one individual instance of the symbol. Now this will only work if you have made it a symbol, but in here what I'm going to do is to select those cells. Now let's say that the change we want is to change the size of the graph paper. Instead of having 1mm square cells, I want them to be 2mm. The first thing I would need to do is to change this from having 10 columns and rows into having 5. While the width remains okay, the height certainly isn't, but we will fix that. By going across to the cells, the width is 2, but the height is set to 1. And if I put 2 in there, it will resize it. And if we zoom out to the entire page, we have managed to update every group of cells to match. There is actually potentially a third way to make changes, and that is to use table formats. Now, while you can create a table format for the tiny table, Affinity Publisher runs extremely slowly when you edit that table format and it tries to apply it to all the tables. So while it does work, it might be a good time to have a coffee while it chugs along with itself. And that's how you fix an app that's broken. Let's have a quick recap. If your page and table are small enough, method 1 is an option. Create a table, add the required number of rows, add the required number of columns, format the default borders, and then format the borders for the group of cells. Use the vector crop tool if required, and you're done. For larger tables, plan B is required. Create a table that's the size of the cell group. Format the default borders, and then format the outer border for the group of cells. Optionally, you can create a symbol via Studio Link and the Affinity Designer toolset. Then use Move Duplicate to create the required duplicates. Use the Vector Crop tool if required, and then to make changes, you can change the global colours, and if you took the time to make a symbol, you're able to edit the symbol. Be careful with table formats. They work, but they're very slow to update. If you want new tutorials and tips and tricks on a regular basis, check out my free training at elainegiles.com/VIP. Hit the subscribe button and notification bell so you don't miss future tutorials. And if you have any requests for specific tutorials, be sure to contact me. I would love to hear from you. Thanks for watching and see you next time.